Emily Carter thought she had her senior year all figured out. The same friends, the same streets, the same coffee shop that felt like hers. But when her father's job uproots the family from Illinois to Querétaro, Mexico, everything she knows about comfort and belonging is suddenly gone. She thought love was something she'd left behind, a part of the life she'd already said goodbye to. But in a city filled with color, language, and unexpected warmth, Emily begins to discover that some connections are meant to find us, no matter where we go. As the days unfold, she learns that home isn't something you leave behind. It's something you build again, one friendship, one moment, one heartbeat at a time. This is The Place That Found Me, a story about courage, belonging, and the beautiful, unpredictable ways love can find you when you least expect it. The Place That Found Me. A story by 10 Chapters Studio. Chapter 1. The Farewell. Emily Carter stared at the boxes stacked high in the living room of her Illinois home, each labeled with black marker, clothes, books, random junk. To her, they might as well have read Life as I Knew It. The move to Querétaro, Mexico felt like the end of everything familiar. Her father's new job thrilled her parents, but for Emily, it meant leaving behind her best friends, her favorite coffee shop, and the comfortable rhythm of senior year. The Carters had spent weeks preparing. Her mom planned every detail, from finding a house to arranging movers, while her dad juggled calls with his new office. Emily, meanwhile, filled her time with goodbyes. Her last hangout with Claire was bittersweet, full of laughter that tried to mask the sting of separation. They exchanged friendship bracelets, promising to FaceTime weekly, but as Emily sat in her now empty room that night, the silence pressed in, like a final goodbye. The morning of the move was chaos wrapped in melancholy. Her mom double-checked the luggage, her dad joked about how much they were packing, and Emily just moved through the motions. As their SUV pulled out of the driveway, her heart felt as heavy as the suitcases in the trunk. Promises to stay in touch echoed hollowly in her head. How could video calls replace late-night talks and shared secrets? The drive to the airport was quiet. Emily stared out the window, watching the familiar Illinois scenery fade into memory. The golden fields and small-town diners disappeared behind the glass, replaced by the blur of airport terminals and flight announcements. "You okay, sweetheart?" her mom asked gently at the gate. Emily nodded, afraid her voice would crack. Her dad squeezed her shoulder, but she couldn't bring herself to smile. Instead, she slipped on her headphones, letting music fill the spaces where words couldn't. The flight to Mexico felt endless. Emily alternated between the window and her phone, scrolling aimlessly. When the plane finally descended, she pressed her forehead against the glass. Querétaro spread beneath them, red-tiled rooftops, winding streets, and distant hills bathed in sunlight. It was beautiful, but it wasn't home. The airport was a rush of Spanish words and unfamiliar sounds. Emily clutched her phrase book like a shield, while her dad chatted confidently with the driver sent to pick them up. Her mom gushed over the weather and the mountains in the distance, but Emily stayed silent, her nerves tightening with every turn of the road. Their new home stood in a quiet residential area near the edge of the city, a colonial-style house with tiled floors, wrought iron balconies, and bougainvillea climbing the walls. Her mom immediately began unpacking, adding colorful cushions and family photos to make it feel warm. Emily wandered from room to room, struggling to see any of it as hers. That evening, they took a walk through their neighborhood. Vendors sold tamales and fresh fruit from carts, families strolled under jacaranda trees, and the air smelled of spice and earth. The pastel houses glowed in the setting sun, but Emily's heart stayed heavy. "Look at that view," her mom said, pointing toward the distant Sierra Gorda hills, their outlines soft against the sky. Emily nodded absently. Her dad nudged her. "Give it a chance, Em. Querétaro's got a lot to offer." She managed a small smile, but said nothing. When they returned home, she lay awake for hours, the hum of distant traffic replacing the quiet of her old neighborhood. The next morning, her parents dove into unpacking, their enthusiasm filling the house. Emily stood in her half-unpacked room, staring at a photo of her and Claire from last summer's carnival. The memory brought a pang of longing. She placed it on her nightstand, a small piece of Illinois amid all the unknowns. By afternoon, she needed air. In the garden, sunlight spilled over the bougainvillea and the rough stone walls. She opened her journal but couldn't find words, only questions she wasn't ready to answer. Her mom's voice broke the silence. "Emily, we're heading to the market. Want to come?" She hesitated, then closed the journal. Maybe distraction was what she needed. The market was alive with sound and color. Vendors called out in Spanish, the air thick with the scent of fruit, coffee, and roasted corn. Emily followed her parents through the aisles, her senses overwhelmed. At one stall, a woman offered her a slice of mango sprinkled with chili and lime. She took a cautious bite, and her eyes widened in surprise. It was sweet, fiery, and completely new. "See?" her dad said, grinning. "Told you you'd like it here." Emily smiled despite herself. Maybe, just maybe, he was right. But as they drove home that evening, her anxiety about starting school crept back in. Tomorrow meant Sierra Vista International School. A new uniform, new faces, and a language that still felt foreign on her tongue. That night, lying in bed, she thought of Claire's words. "You've got this, Em. You're stronger than you think." She clung to them like a lifeline, whispering them softly into the dark. And as sleep finally pulled her under, she let herself hope that maybe, in time, this strange new city could start to feel like home. End of Chapter 1.
Chapter 2. First Impressions. Emily's heart pounded as she stood before the tall gates of Sierra Vista International School, her new home for senior year. Her father's car idled at the curb, her mom smiling from the front seat. "Remember, be yourself," she said, voice full of optimism. "Thanks," Emily managed, gripping her backpack like armor. She waved as they drove off, then turned to face the campus. The school looked nothing like her one back in Illinois. White buildings with red tiled roofs framed lush courtyards, and the morning air smelled faintly of rain and jacaranda blossoms. Students moved in clusters, chatting easily in a mix of English and Spanish. Emily took a deep breath and stepped inside. The administration office was her first stop. A cheerful receptionist handed her a map and a schedule. "Bienvenida, Emily," she said warmly. "Gracias," she replied, her accent clumsy but passable. She glanced at the first class on her list, AP English, room 204. Finding it was harder than expected. Despite the map, the paths twisted between gardens and covered walkways, and every building looked the same. When she finally reached the door, the bell had already rung. Her stomach tightened as she pushed it open. Every head turned. "You must be Emily Carter," the teacher said, breaking the silence. She was tall with kind eyes and a calm smile. "I'm Ms. Ortega. Welcome to AP English. Find any seat you like." Emily spotted an open desk near the back beside a girl with sleek black hair and bright red glasses.
She slid into the seat as quietly as she could. "Hi, I'm Alejandra," the girl whispered with a friendly smile. "Emily," she murmured back. "Don't worry about being late," Alejandra added. "Everyone gets lost their first day." Emily smiled gratefully. "That makes me feel better." The lesson began, but Emily's focus wandered. Her classmates seemed confident, joking softly when the teacher turned to write on the board. She could tell most were local, though a few had accents that hinted at other countries. Their easy rhythm made her feel like an outsider, one who didn't quite belong anywhere yet. When the class broke into small groups, Alejandra introduced her to two other girls, Sofía and Mariana. Both smiled warmly, their curiosity obvious, but not unkind. By the time the bell rang, Emily felt a flicker of relief. Maybe making friends wouldn't be impossible after all. The next few classes passed in a blur. Math felt manageable, even if she had to translate half the teacher's Spanish under her breath. Between periods, she caught snippets of conversation, rapid, musical, and impossible to follow. Every "hola" she gave felt awkward. By lunchtime, her nerves were frayed. The cafeteria buzzed with laughter and motion. Emily stood at the entrance, clutching her tray, trying not to look lost. Then she spotted Alejandra waving from a table near the windows. Relief washed over her, and she hurried over. "How's your first day?" Alejandra asked. "Overwhelming," Emily admitted, sinking into the seat. "But in a good way, I think." Alejandra laughed. "That's how everyone feels at first. You'll get used to it." She introduced Emily to two boys at the table, Diego, a curly-haired class clown with endless energy, and Mateo, quieter but with an easy, attentive smile. "Welcome to Sierra Vista," Diego said dramatically, "the land of eternal homework and bad cafeteria pizza." "Don't listen to him," Mateo said. "It's not that bad." Emily smiled. "I'll reserve judgment." As the group talked, Emily found herself relaxing. They teased each other like old friends, Diego cracking jokes, Sofía rolling her eyes, Alejandra steering the chaos with dry humor. Even Mateo joined in, his quiet remarks timed perfectly to make everyone laugh. For the first time since leaving Illinois, Emily felt like part of something again. After lunch, Alejandra walked her to her next class. "So, what do you think?" "It's a lot," Emily said honestly, "but you guys made it better. Thanks for including me." Alejandra waved a hand. "It's nothing. Everyone deserves a friendly face their first week." They reached the next building, sunlight reflecting off its pale walls. "If you ever get lost again, the library's a good place to hide," Alejandra said with a wink. Emily laughed. "Noted." When the final bell rang, Emily joined the crowd streaming toward the front gates. Her dad's car pulled up just as she spotted Mateo walking toward the soccer field, a ball under his arm. He caught her eye and gave a small wave. "See you tomorrow," he called. Emily hesitated, then smiled. "Yeah, see you." The ride home felt lighter. Her dad asked questions, and for once, she didn't gloss over them. She told him about Alejandra, the confusing hallways, Diego's terrible jokes. Her parents listened, visibly relieved. That evening, she sat in the garden with her journal. This time, the words came easily. "I met people today who made it feel okay to start over," she wrote. "Maybe I can do this." As dusk settled over Querétaro, the city hummed softly beyond the garden wall. Car horns, music, the distant bark of a dog. Emily looked up at the faint glow of the hills in the distance and smiled. It wasn't home yet, but for the first time she could almost imagine it might be. End of Chapter 2.
Chapter 3. The Cultural Divide. Emily woke the next morning with less dread than usual. She'd survived her first day at Sierra Vista International School, and Alejandra had promised to meet her by the fountain near the main gate. The thought made the morning routine, uniform, breakfast, bus ride, almost easy.
The fountain shimmered under the rising sun when she arrived. Alejandra was already there, chatting animatedly with Sofía and Diego. "Morning, Emily," she called, waving. "Morning. Round 2, right?" "Exactly," Alejandra said. "You made it through day 1, so you're basically a veteran now." Their first class was history. The teacher, a tall man with rolled-up sleeves and a booming voice, launched into a lesson on Mexico's independence movement. Emily had learned fragments of it back home, but here the focus felt different, more layered, more personal. Words like criollos and mestizos blurred together as she scribbled notes, her brain working double time to keep up. By the end, her hand ached, but her curiosity was piqued. "That was a lot," she whispered to Alejandra as they packed up. Alejandra grinned. "You'll get used to it, and if you ever need help, I've got you." During break, they gathered under a jacaranda tree, the purple blossoms scattering like confetti around them. Diego appeared, triumphantly holding a tray of steaming café de olla in paper cups. "Fuel for the brave," he declared, handing them out. "Thanks," Emily said, inhaling the cinnamon scent. Alejandra smirked. "Don't be fooled. He's just bribing us so we'll do his homework later." "Guilty," Diego said, unbothered. "But at least I'm generous." Laughter rippled through the group, but Emily's attention drifted when she noticed a cluster of impeccably dressed girls at a nearby bench. Their manicured nails and designer bags gave off an air of quiet competition. One of them, a tall brunette, glanced toward Emily and whispered something to her friends. The group giggled. Emily looked away, her stomach tightening. Alejandra followed her gaze. "That's Natalia and her crew. Don't worry, they're mostly noise." "Do they always stare?" "Only when there's something new to gossip about," Sofía said dryly. "They'll move on soon." Still, Emily couldn't shake the discomfort. It reminded her she was different, her Spanish hesitant, her confidence fragile. But as Alejandra cracked another joke, the tension began to fade. Later that day, chemistry paired her with Mateo. Her nerves spiked when she saw his name on the partner list, but his warm smile steadied her. "Hey, looks like we're lab partners," he said, pulling up a stool beside her. "Lucky you," she joked, though her voice trembled slightly. He laughed. "We'll survive." The experiment involved mixing solutions and recording reactions. Emily focused so hard on not spilling acid that she barely noticed how naturally they worked together. Mateo explained each step with calm patience, never condescending. When she made a small mistake, he grinned. "Don't worry, no explosions yet." She laughed, feeling oddly comfortable. Across the room, Natalia and her friends were more interested in their phones than their lab work. When the teacher walked by, they straightened instantly, all smiles. Emily caught Mateo's amused glance. "They're harmless," he whispered, just loud. "I'm noticing a pattern," Emily whispered back. By lunchtime, the rhythm of the day felt easier. They gathered at their usual table by the windows, sunlight spilling across trays of tacos and fruit cups. Diego was in the middle of another exaggerated story when Natalia and her group walked past. "It must be nice," Natalia said loudly, "getting attention just for being American." Emily froze. Her cheeks flamed. Before she could respond, Alejandra spoke, her tone calm but razor-sharp. "It must be exhausting trying to stay relevant, Natalia." A few nearby tables snickered. Natalia faltered, then flipped her hair and walked off. "Legend," Diego said, raising his drink to Alejandra. Emily smiled weakly. "Thank you." "Don't mention it," Alejandra said. "People like her only have power if you let them." The rest of the lunch felt lighter, though Emily couldn't stop replaying the moment. It wasn't just the insult. It was the reminder that she stood out no matter how hard she'd tried to blend in. Yet her friends' laughter around her dulled the sting. When the final bell rang, Emily packed up, exhausted but strangely content. She'd survived another day, one that included both awkward moments and small victories. As she stepped through the gates, she saw Mateo leaving with his soccer bag slung over one shoulder. "Hey," he said, catching up to her. "You survived again." "Barely," she joked. He smiled. "You'll get the hang of it. And if not, you've got a good team here." "I know," she said softly. "Thanks." As he jogged toward the field, Emily watched him go, a quiet warmth spreading through her chest. Maybe Querétaro wasn't just a new city. It was a chance to learn who she could become. That night, she sat at her desk, writing in her journal, under the hum of the ceiling fan. "Today I felt seen. Not by everyone, but by the right people. Maybe that's enough for now." Outside, the city buzzed softly, the sound of traffic and life moving forward. Emily smiled, closed her notebook, and turned off the light. For the first time, she wasn't dreading tomorrow. End of Chapter 3.
Chapter 4. Sharing Spaces. Rain drummed softly against Emily's window the next morning. The city looked muted under gray clouds, the streets glistening with puddles. She pulled on her hoodie, grabbed her backpack, and tried to ignore the restless flutter in her chest. School was starting to feel familiar, but the language gaps, the laughter she sometimes couldn't follow, it still left her feeling a step behind. By the time she reached Sierra Vista International School, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. Alejandra was waiting under the gate arch, umbrella in hand, chatting with Sofía and Diego. "Morning," Emily said, shaking water from her sleeves. Alejandra grinned. "You made it through traffic and rain? You're officially local now." Emily laughed. "Give me a few more storms before I earn that title." Their first class, math, tested both her patience and her Spanish. The teacher spoke fast, scribbling formulas that blurred together. Alejandra whispered translations when Emily's confusion showed, and by the end of class, Emily's notebook was a chaotic mix of numbers and half-translated notes. "How do you even keep up?" she whispered as they left. Alejandra shrugged. "I don't. I just pretend until something makes sense." Emily smiled, feeling a little less alone. Between classes, Alejandra pointed out new parts of campus, the art studio, the music hall, the upper-level library where students hid to nap or study. The layout was slowly becoming a map in her mind rather than a maze. Querétaro's hills framed the view from the far courtyard, where red-roofed buildings met a patch of pale blue sky breaking through the clouds. By lunchtime, the day had softened. The group gathered at their usual table, trays balanced with tacos and rice bowls. Diego animatedly recounted how he'd slipped during soccer practice and crashed into a goalpost. "You should have seen the coach's face," he said, clutching his ribs dramatically. "I'm lucky to be alive." Sofía groaned. "You tripped over your own shoelace." "Details," he said, waving dismissively. "The important part is my heroic recovery." The table erupted in laughter. Even Emily, who still hesitated over certain words, joined easily now. These moments, the teasing, the shared inside jokes, were starting to feel like home. Midway through lunch, Mateo arrived, his soccer bag slung over one shoulder and his hair damp from the rain. He slid into the empty seat beside Emily. "Hey," he said, flashing a small smile. "Survived math?" "Barely," she said. "Pretty sure I invented a new formula by accident." He laughed. "You'll fit right in. Half the class is guessing most of the time."
Their banter came easily, and Alejandra shot Emily a knowing look that made her cheeks warm. "Emily's improving fast," Alejandra said innocently. "Maybe you should tutor her, Mateo." He raised an eyebrow, pretending to think it over. "If she pays in mangoes with chili, I might consider it." "Deal," Emily said, smiling. That afternoon, their history teacher assigned group projects. Emily found her name next to Mateo's again. She tried not to look too pleased. They agreed to meet in the library after school to plan their presentation. The library's quiet hum felt like another world. Shelves of bilingual books, rain tapping softly at the windows. Mateo spread his notes across the table. "So, do you want to divide the work or brainstorm first?" Emily leaned over the papers. "Maybe start with the outline. I still mix up half the independence dates." He chuckled. "You're not the only one. I've lived here my whole life and still forget which general did what." They worked side by side, laughter softening the weight of concentration. When she stumbled over a Spanish phrase, he gently corrected her without making it awkward. The warmth between them grew with every shared glance. As they wrapped up, golden sunlight cut through the clouds, spilling across the books. "Thanks for helping," she said, packing her notebook. "Anytime. You're easy to work with." The way he said it made her pulse skip. She smiled, unsure what to say. Walking toward the dates afterward, they lingered near the fountain where Alejandra had waited that morning. The air smelled fresh after the rain. "So, plans this weekend?" Mateo asked casually. "Not really. Probably unpack the last few boxes and maybe explore the city. You should come to Café Jardín with us on Saturday. Everyone hangs out there. Good food, great coffee." "Café Jardín," she repeated. "Sounds like a trap for more chili mangoes." He grinned. "No promises." Alejandra and Sofía appeared a moment later, waving from across the courtyard. "Saturday 11, Alejandra called. "Don't be late." She laughed. "You all planned this, didn't you? Obviously, you're part of the group now." As they walked out to meet her dad, Emily felt something shift. The city didn't seem quite as foreign anymore. The laughter, the hills, even the rain. That night in her journal, she wrote, "It's strange how quickly strangers can start to feel like the reason you belong." She paused, then added another line. "Querétaro is still new, but maybe I'm starting to find the pieces of myself that fit here." Outside, the rain began again, steady and soft. Emily closed her journal and let the rhythm lull her toward sleep, her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. End of Chapter 4.
Chapter 5. The Cafe. Saturday morning came bright and clear, sunlight spilling across Emily's window. Her nerves buzzed with a mix of excitement and uncertainty. She'd been in Querétaro for barely 2 weeks, but the invitation to meet her friends outside school felt like a milestone, something normal, something hers. By 11, she was standing outside Café Jardín, a cozy place tucked along a narrow cobblestone street near the historic center. Its bright yellow walls were covered with vines, and the smell of coffee drifted into the street. Inside, the chatter of customers mixed with the clinking of cups and the soft hum of Spanish music. "Emily!" Alejandra waved from a table near the window. The group was already gathered, Sofía, Mariana, Diego, and a seat waiting for her. Emily smiled as she joined them. "You made it," Alejandra said. "Welcome to the best cafe in the city." "I can tell," Emily said, inhaling the scent of fresh bread. "It smells amazing." The waitress arrived with menus, and Diego immediately launched into a passionate debate about which pastries were superior. "Churros con chocolate, obviously," he declared. "Wrong," Alejandra said. "Conchas are the real deal." Emily grinned. "You're all making me hungry." They laughed, and the tension she'd felt melted away. For once, she wasn't the new girl trying to catch up.
just another voice at the table. The food arrived quickly. Plates of pastries, steaming mugs of Mexican hot chocolate, and bright fruit drinks. Emily took a sip and blinked in surprise. This is nothing like the hot chocolate back home. Diego leaned forward. Better, right? Way better, she admitted. She was laughing at one of Diego's stories when the bell above the door chimed. Mateo stepped inside, hair tousled, carrying the easy smile that made her heart trip.
"Sorry I'm late," he said, sliding into the chair beside her. "Family chaos as usual." "No problem," Alejandra said. "We saved your seat, and maybe your breakfast." "Barely," Sofía added, gesturing to the half-empty pastry basket. Mateo laughed, then turned to Emily. "You tried the conchas yet?" "Not yet," she said. He tore one in half and passed her a piece. "Here, it's the only thing that can make early Saturdays worth it." She smiled and took a bite. It was soft and sweet, with just enough cinnamon to make her close her eyes. "Okay, that's officially dangerous." "Told you," he said, his grin widening. But as the laughter around the table grew, Emily noticed something in Mateo's eyes, a flicker of distraction, like a thought he couldn't shake. It wasn't obvious, but she recognized the same quiet heaviness she'd seen before. "You okay?" she asked softly. He hesitated. "Yeah, just stuff at home. Nothing major." Emily wanted to ask more, but Diego interrupted with a story about accidentally texting his teacher instead of his girlfriend. The moment passed, replaced by laughter, but the question lingered in Emily's mind. After lunch, the group wandered into the plaza, where vendors sold handmade jewelry, woven bags, and paintings of the city's famous aqueduct. The air was warm, alive with music from a street guitarist. "This place is incredible," Emily said, turning slowly to take it all in. "Querétaro's full of hidden spots. You've only seen the start." They stopped at a stall selling fresh churros, and Mateo handed one to Emily before she could protest. "Try it with cajeta," he said, dipping his in the caramel sauce. She did, and laughed at the sticky sweetness. "Okay, this city's trying to ruin my self-control." "Pretty much," Mateo said, grinning. As they walked, Emily found herself beside him again, their pace naturally matching. "You never told me what kind of stuff at home you meant," she said gently. He looked down, then exhaled. "My dad's been having a rough time. Lost his job earlier this year. Things have been tense. I try to help where I can, but it's not easy." "I'm sorry. That's a lot to handle." He shrugged, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "It's life. Just wish I could fix it." She wanted to say something comforting, but settled for walking beside him in silence. It felt enough. They rejoined the group near a fountain, where Diego and Mariana were feeding pigeons, despite Alejandra's protests. Sofía snapped a photo, laughing. The afternoon light made everything glow. The laughter, the color, the easy closeness. Later, as the group sat on a stone bench watching the sunset wash the plaza in gold, Mateo leaned closer. "You seem happy," he said. "I am. It's the first time this place has felt like mine." He noted. "Good. It suits you." The words caught me off guard, simple but sincere. I turned to respond, but he was already watching the horizon, the orange sky reflected in his eyes. They all took a group photo before leaving, Diego insisting on a dozen different poses. Emily ended up squeezed between Alejandra and Mateo. When their shoulders brushed, She felt her heartbeat quicken. That night, back in her room, Emily replayed the day. The laughter, the light, the sound of Mateo's voice. There was still so much she didn't understand about this city, about him, about herself. But as she wrote in her journal, she realized something new. Querétaro isn't just a place I moved to. It's a place that's starting to move me. End of Chapter 5.
Chapter 6. The Barbecue. Sunday morning shimmered with sunlight and the hum of cicadas. Emily woke to a message from Alejandra. Diego's barbecue at 1. Bring an appetite. And maybe sunscreen. Emily smiled, stretching under the sheets. Yesterday's cafe trip had felt like a turning point. The laughter, the easy rhythm, the way Mateo had looked at her when she talked, it all lingered in her mind. She couldn't tell if it meant something, but her heart wanted to believe it did. By noon, Alejandra's car honked outside. Emily grabbed a bowl of chips her mom insisted she bring and hurried out. Sofía was already in the back seat, waving through the window. "You're coming to your first Mexican barbecue," Alejandra announced. "Prepare yourself." "For what?" Emily asked. "Noise, food, possibly regret." They laughed as Alejandra navigated the quiet residential streets on the city's north side. Diego's house came into view, a sprawling single-story home with a red tile roof and a huge yard lined with bougainvillea. The smell of grilled meat drifted through the open gate. Diego was flipping burgers by a stone grill, wearing sunglasses far too big for his face. "Welcome to the best barbecue in Querétaro," he shouted. "Eat first, complain later." Emily laughed, instantly at ease. The backyard was buzzing, friends chatting under the shade of jacaranda trees, music spilling from a speaker, a cooler filled with sodas and agua fresca. Sofía and Mariana were arranging plates, while Alejandra was already teasing Diego about burning the meat. Emily joined in, and soon they were all laughing so hard, even Diego cracked up. Mateo arrived a little later, carrying a tray of tortillas, and that same half-tired, half-warm smile. "Family duties again?" Alejandra asked. "Always," he said with a shrug. "But I made it." He looked at Emily then, and something in his gaze made my stomach flip. "Glad you did," Emily said quietly. "Me too." The afternoon flowed easily. Music, laughter, and endless food. Emily tried everything. Tacos al pastor, grilled corn, spicy salsa that nearly made me cry. Diego declared it a rite of passage. "You're officially one of us now," he said, handing her a soda. "Does that come with a badge?" "Better. Unlimited access to my barbecues," he replied solemnly. They all ended up sitting in a circle on the grass, swapping stories. Emily's cheeks hurt from smiling. Every so often, she caught Mateo watching her. When their eyes met, he didn't look away. Later, Diego's younger brothers brought out a soccer ball, begging for a match. Within minutes, teams were chosen. Emily found herself paired with Mateo, while Alejandra captained the opposing team. "This will be easy," Diego boasted. 10 minutes later, they were losing spectacularly. Emily was terrible at soccer, but Mateo laughed through every fumbled kick, cheering her on. "You're supposed to chase the ball, not run away from it," he teased. "I'm avoiding injury," I said between laughs. By the time the game ended, Alejandra's team victorious, everyone collapsed onto the grass, breathless and grinning. As the sun began to dip, painting the yard in gold, the conversation quieted. Music played softly and the smell of smoke lingered in the air. Emily sat a little apart from the group, legs stretched out, watching the clouds. Mateo dropped down beside her, brushing a blade of grass from his jeans. "Good game," she said. "I think we invented a new way to lose," he replied, smiling. She laughed, then hesitated. "You've seemed a little off lately. Everything okay?" He was quiet for a moment. "My dad's still between jobs. It's been rough. He's proud, doesn't want help. But sometimes I worry more than I should." Emily turned toward him. "That sounds hard." He nodded, eyes distant. "Yeah, but I'll figure it out." She wanted to comfort him, but words felt too small. Instead, she placed her hand lightly on his. For a moment, he didn't move. Then his fingers curled around hers, steady and warm. "Thanks," he said softly. "You don't have to understand it. Just being here helps." They sat like that, the world narrowing to the glow of string lights and laughter behind them. When Diego's mom brought out sparklers, everyone ran to grab one. Soon, the backyard shimmered with light and laughter. Mateo stood close enough that their shoulders brushed as they watched the sparks fade. "This is nice," he murmured. "It really is," Emily said. For a heartbeat, the noise around them disappeared. Then Diego yelled, "Photo time!" and everyone piled together for a group picture. Emily ended up beside Mateo again, his hand brushing hers just before the camera flashed. As the evening wound down, Alejandra drove the girls home. Emily gazed out the window at the passing city lights. Warm, alive, familiar now in a way that surprised her. Her chest felt full in the best way possible. That night, she lay awake replaying the day. The games, the laughter, the quiet talk under the fading sky. She touched her fingers where his had been, half smiling. She didn't know what the next week would bring, but one thing was clear. Querétaro didn't feel like a temporary stop anymore. It was starting to feel like the beginning of something. End of Chapter 6.
Chapter 7. The School Week. Monday morning came with the familiar buzz of Emily's alarm and a hint of cool air drifting through her window. For once, she didn't dread the day. The weekend's laughter still echoed in her mind. The smell of grilled food, the glow of sparklers, the feel of Mateo's hand briefly touching hers. Her mom knocked softly on the door. "First full week ahead. How are you feeling?" "Better," Emily answered, smiling faintly. And it was true. For the first time, school didn't feel like an obstacle. It felt like a continuation. The morning traffic through Querétaro was slow, horns mixing with vendors' voices on the corners. When Emily reached Sierra Vista International, she spotted Alejandra and Sofía by the gate, already chatting. "You look suspiciously cheerful," Alejandra said. "Must be the sunshine," Emily replied, trying not to blush. But her eyes drifted to the soccer field anyway. Mateo was there, laughing with Diego as they passed a ball back and forth. Something in her chest tightened, excitement and nerves all tangled together. Classes dragged, her focus scattered. Every time the door creaked open, she caught herself glancing up. When Mateo finally arrived late to history, hair still damp from practice, she tried to look disinterested. It didn't work. By lunch, she felt restless. The group gathered under the jacaranda tree, as always, but Mateo was quieter than usual, his easy smile a little dimmer. He joined in the jokes, but kept glancing at his phone. "Everything okay?" Emily asked, when the others turned to throw fries at Diego. He hesitated. "Yeah, just tired. Been helping out at home a lot." Emily nodded, though worry prickled in her stomach. That night, she texted him, "Hey, just checking in. Hope everything's okay." The message stayed unread. By Wednesday, his empty seat gnawed at her. The school day stretched endlessly, the hours marked by glances toward the door that never opened. Even the cafeteria chatter felt muted. When Emily asked if she was okay, she just said, "Yeah, just tired." But inside, her mind was spinning.
Thursday came, still no Mateo. The uncertainty made her stomach ache. She imagined a dozen worst-case scenarios, each worse than the last. On the bus ride home, she stared out at the glowing hills, her reflection faint in the window. It struck her how quickly he'd become part of her daily rhythm, and how hollow it felt without him there. That evening, she tried to focus on homework, but ended up scrolling her phone. No message, no new posts, just silence. She wanted to ask Alejandra for his address, but it felt intrusive. What if he didn't want her to know? By Friday morning, Emily's mood matched the overcast sky. She took her usual seat in history, her notebook open, but empty. Then, just before the bell, the door opened, and Mateo walked in. He looked tired but lighter somehow. His hair was messy, his shirt wrinkled, but he smiled when he saw her. "Hey," he whispered, sliding into his chair. "Hey," I whispered back. "You're alive." "Barely," he said with a small laugh. After class, they stepped into the courtyard, the air bright and cool after the rain. "I was in Mexico City with my dad. He had an interview. Good news, he got the job." Emily's relief came out as a breathy laugh. "That's amazing." "Yeah, he'll have to travel a lot, but it's a start. We needed it." She smiled. "I'm really happy for you." He nodded, his eyes warm. "Thanks, and sorry for disappearing. Things got a little crazy." "It's okay," she said softly. "I'm just glad you're back." Their friends caught up later on, dragging them into plans for the weekend. Diego, of course, was already organizing. Bowling night. Losers buy churros. "Deal. But you'll be the one paying," Alejandra said. When Diego turned to argue, Mateo leaned close and said quietly, "You're coming, right?" Emily grinned. Wouldn't miss it. The rest of the day moved easily. Between classes, Emily caught herself smiling at small things. The smell of rain on warm pavement, the laughter echoing down the hall, the knowledge that things felt right again. That evening, she sat at her desk, the hum of crickets outside her window. She wrote in her journal, "Sometimes the people who feel temporary become the reason a place starts to matter." She paused, tapping the pen against the page. Then she added, "He's back, and maybe that's all I needed this week." Outside, the city lights blinked against the hills, and a soft wind carried the scent of rain through her window. Querétaro felt different tonight. Not foreign, not temporary, just steady, familiar. And for Emily, that was everything. End of Chapter 7.
Chapter 8. Bowling Night.
The bowling alley pulsed with light and laughter. Neon lanes stretched across the room, music thumped from hidden speakers, and the air smelled faintly of popcorn and shoe spray. Emily stood by the entrance with Alejandra and Sofía, trying not to let her nerves show. This was her first real night out in Querétaro. No parents, no translator app, no safety net. Just friends. Diego waved from the counter, already arguing with the attendant about lane reservations. 2 lanes, he declared proudly when they arrived. "Don't ask how, just accept my greatness." Mateo, standing beside him, rolled his eyes. He bribed them with extra nachos. Negotiation skills, Diego corrected. A true leader knows his currency. Emily laughed, tension easing. Mateo looked different tonight, relaxed, wearing a simple navy hoodie that somehow made his eyes darker. He caught my glance and smiled. You ready to lose? He teased. Bold talk for someone who was late to class all week, I shot back. He grinned. Touché. Everyone grabbed shoes and picked out bowling balls. Mariana complained loudly about the colors. Diego bragged about a winning technique, and Alejandra queued up songs on the speaker system. The noise, the energy, it all felt alive in a way Emily hadn't realized she missed. When the first game started, Diego threw a strike on his second try and immediately began dancing. "Behold perfection," he shouted. "Beginner's luck," Sofía said. "Jealousy is unbecoming," he replied, blowing her a kiss. Emily's first throw veered wildly into the gutter. She groaned, but laughter from her friends made it impossible to be embarrassed. Mateo nudged her shoulder. "You were aiming for the left pin, right?" "Totally," I said. "It's a very advanced strategy." He chuckled. "You'll get the hang of it." As the turns went by, Emily relaxed. The flashing lights, the jokes, the bursts of applause. It was messy and wonderful. When Mateo's turn came, he moved with an easy confidence, rolling the ball in one smooth motion. It curved perfectly and crashed through all 10 pens. "Show off," Alejandra muttered. "I think I've seen the next national champion," I clapped. Mateo turned with a mock bow. "Autographs later." Midway through the night, he gestured for her to follow him to the snack counter. The music faded slightly as they stepped away from the group. "Want something to eat?" he asked. "I owe you after that gutterball coaching session." "Fine," I said, smiling, "but only if it involves sugar." They split a plate of nachos and 2 sodas, leaning against the counter while the crowd buzzed behind them. For the first time all night, the noise around them seemed to soften. "I didn't thank you properly for checking in last week," Mateo said. "I saw your message even though I didn't answer." "I was just worried," I said. "You seemed far away." He nodded, eyes dropping to his drink. "It's been a tough year. My dad's job loss, the stress at home. I felt like I had to fix everything. But when you texted, it reminded me I don't have to carry it all alone." Emily hesitated, then said softly, "You're not alone. You've got people who care, me included." He looked up, something unspoken flickering in his eyes. "Yeah, I know." Before either could say more, Diego yelled across the room, "Lovebirds, your turn." Mateo groaned. He's incapable of silence. Emily laughed. "Guess we should get back before they stage a search party." They returned to chaos. Diego arguing about scores, Sofía threatening to revoke his team captain status, and Alejandra recording everything for future blackmail. Emily's throw that round actually hit several pins, earning mock cheers from everyone. "Progress," Mateo said. "Miracle," Diego corrected. "Watch it," she said, laughing as she elbowed him lightly. When the final game ended, they piled into a booth with fries and milkshakes. The conversation bounced between ridiculous and sincere. School gossip, inside jokes, even plans for a hiking trip the next weekend. Emily couldn't stop smiling. The laughter was loud and easy, the kind that made her forget she'd ever felt like an outsider. As the night wound down, the group drifted toward the exit, still teasing Diego for his self-declared victory. Outside, the air was cool, the city lights glowing softly against the hills. "Need a ride?" Mateo asked, hands tucked in his hoodie pockets. Alejandra's got me, she said, nodding toward her friend's car. He hesitated, then smiled. Good, just making sure. Thanks for tonight. It was fun. Yeah, he said quietly. It really was. They stood there for a moment, neither rushing to leave. The others called out goodbyes, laughter echoing as car doors slammed. Finally, Mateo said, "See you on the hike Sunday?" "Definitely," she replied. As she climbed into Alejandra's car, Emily looked back. Mateo was still by the curb, hands in his pockets, watching her with that small, thoughtful smile that made her heart ache in the best way. The drive home was quiet, the hum of tires steady against the dark. Emily rested her head against the window, watching the city blur by. Neon lights, narrow streets, the faint outline of hills in the distance. For the first time, Querétaro felt less like a place she'd been dropped into and more like one she was becoming part of. That night, she opened her journal but didn't write much, just one line. Maybe belonging isn't about finding a place, maybe it's about finding people who make you want to stay.
End of Chapter 8. Chapter 9. The Hike. Saturday morning dawned bright and cool, the sky streaked with thin clouds drifting over the hills. Emily laced up her sneakers and packed a small backpack, water bottle, snacks, sunscreen. Trying to ignore the nervous flutter in her stomach, the plan was to hike up Cerro de las Campanas, a local favorite with panoramic views of the city. Diego had promised it was a walk in the park. Alejandra had rolled her eyes and told her to bring extra water anyway. When Emily arrived at the meeting spot near the trailhead, the group was already gathering. Alejandra waved enthusiastically while Diego tried to untangle the straps of his backpack. Sofía and Mariana were laughing about something, and Mateo stood beside them, leaning against a wooden fence, sunlight catching the edges of his hair. "Morning," Emily said, trying to sound casual. He smiled, easy and warm. "You made it. Thought maybe you'd bail once you saw the hill." "I considered it," I joked, "but figured I'd regret missing the view." "Good call," he said, adjusting his cap. "It's worth it." The trail began through low brush, the scent of earth and eucalyptus heavy in the air. They climbed slowly, stopping often to catch their breath and laugh at Diego's dramatic complaints. "Who planned this torture?" he groaned. "You did," Alejandra reminded him. "Clearly I was under duress." He clutched his chest. Emily's laughter came easily. Between the jokes and the rhythm of footsteps on gravel, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. Mateo stayed close, occasionally pointing out landmarks, the old university dome in the distance, the winding streets of the historic center below. "Querétaro looks small from up here," he said quietly, "but when you're inside it, it feels endless." She nodded, breathing hard. "Like life, kind of." He smiled. "Exactly." By the time they reached the lookout, the city stretched out beneath them, terracotta rooftops, church spires, and the long stone arches of the aqueduct cutting across the horizon. The view shimmered in the noon light, and Emily's chest filled with awe. "Worth it?" Mateo asked, nudging her shoulder. "Definitely," she said, catching her breath. "Remind me to stop complaining about uphill climbs." "Noted," he teased. They spread out a blanket and unpacked snacks, the smell of sandwiches and fruit mixed with the crisp mountain air. Diego, of course, managed to spill juice on his shirt within minutes. "New record," Alejandra said dryly. "Adds character," Diego insisted, wiping at the stain. "You're impossible," Sofía said, laughing. For a while, they just sat there, talking, eating, enjoying the quiet hum of wind through the grass. Emily leaned back on her hands, letting the sunlight warm her face. She hadn't realized how much she had needed this. The open air, the laughter, the feeling of belonging. After lunch,
a smaller group decided to wander further up the ridge. Emily followed Mateo along the narrow trail while the others stayed behind, their voices fading into the distance. The path wound upward between rocks and shrubs, and soon the city noise disappeared completely. All she could hear was the whisper of wind and the crunch of their shoes. "Thanks for inviting me," I said after a while. He glanced back. "You didn't need an invitation. You're part of the crew now." "I still feels weird sometimes, like I'm borrowing someone else's life." "I get that," he said. "I used to feel the same way, even here."
She stopped. "Really?" "Yeah. My family moved from Guadalajara when I was 10. I hated it at first. I didn't know anyone, thought I'd never fit in." He looked out over the city. "But eventually, Querétaro stopped feeling new. It just became home." Emily studied him, the sunlight catching on his lashes. "Do you ever miss it? Where you came from?" "Sometimes. But I think you can belong in more than one place." She nodded slowly, letting the thought settle. They reached a quiet spot overlooking the valley. The wind tugged at Emily's hair as she looked out over the city. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It is," Mateo said. But when she turned, he wasn't looking at the view. He was looking at her. For a long moment, neither spoke. The air felt charged, fragile. Then, as if sensing how close they stood, Mateo stepped back and cleared his throat. "We should head down before Diego eats everyone's snacks." Emily smiled faintly. "Good idea." They made their way back to the others, the conversation lighter now. Diego was attempting to juggle apples, Mariana filming the disaster for proof. Laughter filled the clearing, and the easy chaos made everything feel right again. As they packed up to leave, Mateo caught Emily's gaze one last time. "Next time, we'll find an easier hike." "Or bring oxygen," she replied. He chuckled. "Deal." On the ride home, Emily sat by the window watching the hills fade behind them and the city rise again in the distance. Her legs ached, her hair was a mess, but her heart felt steady. That night, she opened her journal and wrote, "Sometimes belonging sneaks up on you. You don't see it happen, you just realize one day that you're no longer counting the days since you left home." She closed the notebook, listening to the faint sounds of the city drifting in through her open window. A guitar somewhere nearby, laughter echoing down the street, life unfolding all around her. Querétaro didn't feel like the end of something anymore. It felt like the start. End of Chapter 9. Chapter 10, The Confession. Monday came with a pale blue sky and the dry warmth that always seemed to gather over the hills. Emily walked through the gates of Sierra Vista International School with a steadier heart than she had a month ago. The hike, the bowling night, Diego's barbecue, each moment had stitched itself into something that felt suspiciously like a life. Still, the morning had edges. She hadn't seen Mateo yet. He'd texted a quick "see you Monday" last night, but the hallways were crowded and noisy and full of everyone else. She told herself not to look for him, and then looked anyway. First period drifted by in a soft blur of notes and half-formed thoughts. In second, the principal announced an assembly. University prep, deadlines, scholarship information. The whole senior class filed into the auditorium, the hum of whispers rolling over the rows. Emily sat between Alejandra and Sofía, trying to focus on the counselor's slide about application timelines. Halfway through, a figure slipped in at the side aisle. Mateo. His hair was messy, like he'd rushed. He scanned the seats, eyes sharp even from a distance, and then he found her. The glance was brief, but she felt it like a spark under her ribs. "Breathe," Alejandra whispered, teasing. "I am," Emily whispered back, failing. The counselor's voice faded into the background as Emily watched the pale white spill across the stage. She tried to be practical. This was just a crush. School would end, life would move on. But practical didn't match how her stomach dipped when he looked at her, or how her chest steadied when he smiled. Practical didn't explain how Querétaro had turned from map to memory in such a short time. When the assembly ended, the crowd bottlenecked at the doors. Emily slipped out a side exit into the quieter corridor where sunlight pooled across the tiled floor. She needed air, a second to reset, to not feel like every cell in her body was listening for his voice.
"Emily?"
His voice. She turned. Mateo had crossed the hall, hands tucked into his pockets like he didn't trust them to stay still. He wasn't smiling, but he wasn't guarded either. He looked decided. "Can we talk?" he asked. She nodded, following him toward the open courtyard behind the auditorium. A jacaranda arched overhead. Purple blossoms scattered like confetti on the benches. The city's hum drifted through the breezeway. Traffic, a distant guitar, life happening as usual. I kept trying to find the right time, but I think I was waiting for perfect, and perfect never shows up. Emily's heart beat an unhelpful rhythm. "Okay?" He exhaled, looked at the sky, then back at her. The past few weeks, I was trying to balance everything. My dad's job, school, soccer, and then... He stopped, shook his head, and then you. You made everything feel lighter and harder at the same time.
For a moment, neither of them moved. The air between them felt charged, but quiet. The kind of silence that holds everything words can't say. Mateo's smile softened, tipping into something she hadn't seen before. Shy, certain, and a little odd. He reached for her hand like it was the most natural thing in the world, his thumb tracing soft circles against her skin. When she didn't pull away, he leaned closer, and her breath caught. The world around them seemed to fade. When his fingers brushed her cheek, warmth spread through her in a slow, dizzying wave. His touch was gentle, but certain, and before she could think, before she could remind herself they were still standing in the school courtyard, his lips found hers. The first touch of his lips sent a shiver through her, light as air, almost cautious. And then the kiss deepened just enough to make her forget everything else. There were no school, no footsteps in the distance, no need to breathe. Only him. Only this moment. When they finally parted, Emily stood still, her heart racing, her lips tingling where his had been. Mateo's forehead rested against hers, and when their eyes met, the quiet in her chest filled with something that felt like certainty, as if the world had finally, mercifully, fallen into place. The school bell rang somewhere behind them, distant and unreal, tugging the world slowly back into motion. Mateo gave a small laugh, breathless and warm. "I guess that's our cue," he said softly. Emily nodded, still dazed, a smile tugging at her lips. "Yeah, probably." But neither of them moved right away. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, eyes lingering for a heartbeat longer. "We'll figure it out," he said. She smiled. "We already are." Only then did they step apart, walking back toward the main building, their hands brushing one last time before they let go. That evening, Emily opened her journal and wrote only one line. "Querétaro is the place that found me." She closed the notebook, smiling as the golden light faded through her window. For the first time since she'd arrived, she didn't feel like a visitor in someone else's story. She felt home. end of The Place That Found Me. If you enjoyed the story, please like this video and subscribe for more 10-chapter audiobooks, heartfelt stories about love, belonging, and the quiet moments that change everything.